Hello, I'd like to welcome you all here today, and my name is Becky Lancaster. I'm a family support specialist with Uplift, which is Wyoming's Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health Services. I'm also a parent and a grandparent of children with special needs. As a family, we've navigated the developmental disability system, we've navigated the mental health system, and also the medical system. On behalf of the Family to Family Health Information Center, which is a collaboration between Wyoming Institute for Disabilities and Uplift, we're bringing you this topic today on the importance of socializing your child with their peers and maybe some strategies that you may find helpful. So I'd like to turn it over to my faculty partner to introduce herself.
Thank you, Becky. My name's Ann Bowen. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work in the School of Nursing at the University of Wyoming. And today we're going to talk about, starting with talking about developmental trends in peer relationships and ways parents can help strengthen those relationships. And first we'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of socializing for children.
One of the things that we talk about with parents, and I often ask the parents I work with, is, as a parent, what is your job? You know, why do you exist? As parents, why do we exist in our kids' lives? And obviously, things like feeding them and clothing them and protecting them and loving them. But one of the major jobs of a parent is to socialize their children. And so we're going to talk some more about what that means and what that looks like.
Okay, so we'd like to start off just talking about early infancy and what to expect from your child and how you can help them interacting with you and with other children. Now, obviously, the infant primarily interacts with you, and with babies, what they start doing very early, we all wait for that first smile, and we laugh about whether it's gas or really a smile. And then they start pointing and vocalizing. And really, they take turns very early. At least by 4 months, the infant generally starts to do turn-taking with sounds and eye contact with their parent. So the baby will point, smile, and then if you point and smile back, and then they'll do it, and then you can go back and forth. They don't interact with many objects at this point. It's just early interaction with the parent. So playing copycat with your infant when they're in their car seat or on the floor, interacting back and forth. Talk to your infant. Describe things. The more words they hear about colors, shapes, the quicker they learn to interact with them. And another important aspect is place your infant so they can watch you, watch other adults, watch children communicate. And we were talking earlier about so often now children are kept in their car seats where they can't really see things. Putting them in a front pack facing front where they can look out, see the world as you go places is really important.
And I think allowing children, even if you're at the store, you're at Walmart, you're at a grocery store, is, if at all possible, get them out of the car seat so they can have they can really begin to observe the world around them, and they can see what other people are doing and how other people are interacting. And it also gives them opportunity, because often people will come up and say, oh, what a cute baby. So we need to get our babies out of the car seats. We need to let them see the world, give them some opportunities to kind of explore.
So once your infant moves sort of into early toddlerhood, now their interactions are not necessarily with each other so much as with objects, and you start to see struggles over toys, but they will imitate older infant behaviors and how they act toward toys. So giving them things to play with, setting them up to where they have things to play with. What I recommend at this age is really what I call special time, even by 2, or 18 months. Get down on the floor with your child. Set aside 20 minutes a day if you can. Turn off the TV, turn off your cell phone, and watch your toddler play. What do they do? And not necessarily asking them what they're doing, but joining in by doing what they do. Imitate them, describe what they do, not what you do, and praise their efforts. If they line up their toys, praise them for what a nice job they've done lining up their toys. You don't have to really know why. You don't have to know what the goal is. They're simply doing things, and describing that really reinforces language, understanding colors. The more you describe what goes on, the stronger the play will be. And it's very fun to just see how quickly you can engage your child by just paying attention to them.
And we talk about that as kind of a plugging out the electronics and plugging in with your child. So turning off the cell phones and the TV and the computers and all of the things that we tend to get us distracted. Get off of Facebook and really just getting down on the floor and playing and interacting and having some fun.
Yeah, being a 2-year-old, which we don't get to do very often. But also important at this time in trying to help your child be accepted in the world by adults and other children is to definitely enforce a no-hitting rule. And no hitting includes biting, kicking, throwing, any of those aggressive behaviors. And the kids know it. Very quickly they understand that no hitting means all of those things. And it's probably not a good idea to do a lot of play fighting, a lot of physical roughhousing, because kids at this age don't know how to stop. Once it becomes real, they can't stop. And it also teaches physical aggression.
And they have a hard time, kids at this age, if they play fight, they have a hard time differentiating between real and play, and so then they take it into the playgrounds, and they think they're playing and somebody else perceives it as aggressive.
So if you watch toddlers playing, they really imitate each other, especially older children, sort of like the infant, but more so. And they'll copy each other, they'll copy you. And they do a lot more interactive play, whereas before it was sort of what we call parallel play, where they just they do the same thing but separately. And now you'll see the toddlers start into fantasy play. They play run and chase games. They'll match and imitate pretend games. They begin recruiting others into pretend play. You be the mommy, I'll be the baby, that kind of play. And they'll have scripted joint play at this age where they play doctor or they play house or they play I'm the police person, you're the burglar. And they definitely have preferences in their friendships. They have shared emotions. They know who they like and who they don't like, even in the preschool years. So what parents can think about at this age is really helpful is, set up play dates. We don't have kids running around the neighborhoods as much anymore, so you do have to arrange dates for them to play, or some time in childcare if it's possible. Encourage fantasy play, especially during special time when you're playing with them, and describing what they do. Things like clothing, hats, costumes, interactive toys like Legos are great at this stage as long as they're big enough that the child can't swallow them.
We did a study, a time study with some children this age that we had been working with, and found that when they were given things to do like playing beauty shop, where they could fix mommy's hair, or dress up, and they got to dress up somebody, when there was something that they were doing and using their imagination and they got to kind of just play, that they stayed engaged and stayed more on task for about twice the length of time as if we just gave them a toy to play with that all the kid had to do was to push a button and then watch the machine do something. And so as much as all of the toys that have the bells and whistles can be fun, they don't really seem to hold children's interest as much as some of the interactive play or the dress up or the make-believe.
And make-believe is a normal developmental thing to be doing. So your child having pretend friends, pretend animals is very common. It's also, as you think about helping your child negotiate the outside world, it's really the focus on regulating their emotions, and they have to regulate their own emotions, is very important. So avoiding physical aggression, not allowing any hitting, kicking, biting, no tantrums, don't accept the screaming and yelling for just because they want a toy or something they can't have. So now we talk about a little bit about later childhood as they start into 6, 7, 8 years old. What you'll see typically with children this age is their peer group expands. Suddenly they don't have just 2 or 3 friends, they've got, there's a whole crowd of them. But you also see boys and girls will typically segregate. You have boy groups and you have girl groups. And their close friends are almost exclusively gender dependent. They also start to recognize differences a lot more. This is when kids start collecting things, sorting things, labeling things, and that extends to other kids. And it's normal, but it's a time to watch how they're labeling, help them do it appropriately. But they do have negative views of categories to which they don't belong. They're very often will talk about things being different, but they're negatively labeled. But they're still very variable across settings. I mean, they may label certain groups one way, and yet in another setting it's not true anymore. So helping the kids, realizing this is normal, but working with your child to not ostracize other children is really important. You'll also see your child at this stage starting to gossip. And it doesn't mean, and gossip in this sense isn't necessarily negative. They may talk about other kids in positive ways too. But they do talk about the kids that aren't part of their group and what they look like and what they wear and what they do. But they find it entertaining, and it also builds group solidarity, which is at this stage an important developmental thing for kids to do. But they also, and the other side of this, is they start to appreciate other children's feelings, intentions, and they accept that their feelings may be different than others. So at this stage, there's sort of a perspective-taking, beginning empathy that is typically seen. So I think this is a point where parents can be very helpful, and again, not accepting aggression, emotional control really should be well established at this point. And the advantage of that is your child will try to find other children who don't hit, who aren't aggressive. It helps them develop their verbal skills because they aren't allowed to use physical aggression to get what they want. You can help your child in any organized sports and activities that they're able to do. There are chat rooms for children, but again, we're going to talk about internet use and monitoring internet use. Don't just allow your child to have free access to the web. There are summer camps that are great places for middle school children to socialize with other children where it's controlled. If your child has an illness or a disability, this is a good time for your child to educate their classmates about the illness, because the empathy the other children are developing, their ability to understand difference in children, and accept that if they know what it is. So it's a good time for your child to have, they can do a presentation to the class, that kind of thing. Another thing is helpful to children at this age is when they express futility or they express frustration with their chronic problems. If they say the future doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, empathizing by saying something like, I'm sorry you feel that way, is very helpful. It's helping them know that you understand their feelings, but you're not going to talk them out of it, and trying to talk them out of it is not generally successful.
And just kind of on the empathy, it's important, obviously, from the time that children are very, very young, and certainly at this age group, that we begin to teach our children empathy. Kids can be taught empathy. It often doesn't just happen. So we know, and there's a lot of research out there that says that kids that are more empathetic tend to be better socialized, tend to get along with their peers better, tend to get along with adults better. And some of the things that we can do as parents as far as teaching empathy is getting them involved in if there's something going on at the school, like jump rope for heart. Encourage your children to volunteer for those things and cheer them on when they do it. I know that during September, the firemen are usually doing fill the boot for muscular dystrophy. Even just handing your child a nickel and saying, here, put this in the boot, this will help another child, helps your child begin to think outside of themselves, which is really what empathy is, that the world doesn't just evolve around me and it's not just about me. And we know that kids that have empathy are more connected to humanity. They have more a stake in humanity, and they're more likely to care about other people, and therefore they're better socialized, and they just tend to be happier people. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I would say on how parents can help is that as we're talking to our kids, it's really defined, because as parents we're really good at saying things like be good, behave, be nice, be respectful. And my definition of be good may be very, very different than a 7-year-old's definition of be good. So I think as parents, we need to really define what behavior do we want to see, what does it look like, and maybe even teach them, because sometimes kids do what they do because it's all they know how to do. So we need to get better at, we call it replacement behaviors. So instead of saying don't do this, we say this is what you can do. So we begin to teach them some of those skills and not be quite so vague.
Mm-hmm. I think that goes along with the early describing what they do, mm-hmm. and giving them specific descriptions. And it's sometimes interesting, if you ever want to try this, is ask your child what be good means and see what they say.
Well, I was sharing with Ann earlier today about a little person we worked with, and it's one of my best examples. Cutest little boy I've ever met, and his mom was working really, really hard on his behavior, and he had a great teacher who was working, and I happened to be at the house one day, and he's about 4 years old, 5 years old, and he came in, and his mom said, you look really happy. He said, I am. I had a good day today. And she said, why was it a good day? And he said, because I didn't make anybody bleed. So his definition of be good and everybody else's definition of be good was a little different. And I think it's really important that we really define for our kids what we expect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so once we hopefully have negotiated middle childhood, mm-hmm. Then comes the new parenting skill with the adolescent and adolescent social relationships. When now, unlike the elementary school child or the middle school child, the adolescent has a much smaller peer network. It decreases, it becomes more selective, but their friends may surpass you, the parent, in providing all support and advice as far as the child's concerned. Teenagers will begin to disclose intimate things to one another. It's very common. But they also accept and understand that their friends may have other friends, which in middle school or elementary school, typically you're best friends or you're not friends. And once you get it to be a teenager, there's starting to be that sort of perspective that we may not all have the same friends. We may have other friends in our network. And then starts the dating. First dates are generally strongly tied to their social group and within their group. Then they move into sort of a more personal relationship that's less influenced by their social group. And finally they begin to consider the possibility of long-term commitments and start talking about being together forever and that kind of thing. One thing I think is helpful for parents, I mean, it's hard, I think, but you sometimes just have to accept some things about your teenager. And teens are secretive. They hide some of their poor decisions and their healthcare decisions from their parents. It doesn't mean you don't want to know and you don't try to help them talk to you about it. But at some level, they are going to have their secrets. And they'll resent parents for being over-involved, especially if your child in their health care. They want to start taking control of their own health, their own friends. They want to they will definitely resent over-involvement. They may be open to observations and thoughts and ideas, but not directives. And I think example from my actual morning, being a late teen myself, because teens think a lot like adults. And I was driving into a parking lot this morning, and I whipped around the corner a little fast. But then I slowed down, and there was a woman walking, and she gave me this stare. So I stared back. And her answer was to look at me and say, "Slow down." And my first reaction as a good teenager was, "No, you didn't have to hurry up. I'm not going to do that." And I realized if she had said something to me more like, "You scared me," my reaction would have been, "Ooh, I'm sorry, I will go slower." So think about that with your adolescent, how things make you feel and not necessarily the directives for what you want to have happen. Because at this stage, they probably have the ability to come to those decisions on their own if you help them. And your teen, any teen, has days when they think it just isn't worth it. Same as we feel sometimes. And at that point, again, it's letting them know you understand that you're not going to talk them out of it. That you're sorry they feel that way. But try to avoid the but and how they should feel. So I think some things you can think about with teenagers. If you expect your child to be fun, happy, joyful, they're more likely to be that way. So if you try to be happy and you think they'll be happy, they will respond in kind. Encourage their strengths and any activities that they can do, especially as many normal teen behaviors as you can encourage. And when your teen expresses feelings of hopelessness, which just about every teen does, it doesn't work to say you disappoint me or you don't really mean that, but empathy is on your part is what's helpful. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'd be frustrated too. Is there something I can do to help? And then allow your child to fit in wherever possible. Remember, teens are very rigid in their expectations. And so, again, blue hair is a harmless thing they can do. Choose your battles wisely with your teen.
One of the things that we encourage parents, we call it unpredictables. And so if you have a child, when you talk about expect the child to be fun and joyful, is one of the ways we can do if you've asked your child, say, to empty the garbage and they get a little growly, instead of turning it into an argument, something fun like, "Oh, so what I'm hearing from you is you want one big wet floppy kiss from your mama," often will just turn the whole interaction around. And so as parents, if we kind of stay playful and fun, not take everything so personally, and just really play with our kids, they often will respond in kind. Because kids really do like to have fun. And we just need to kind of have fun with them.
Good, some great ideas. So let's talk a little bit here about bullying, a topic that's on many of our minds these days. And bullying is basically aggressive behavior, and there's generally a power imbalance, whether it's real or the child just feels like there's a power imbalance. And that imbalance might be physical, a big person and a small person. It might be that person has embarrassing information about the other teen, or it may be an imbalance in terms of popularity, who's in the in group, who's in the nerd group. But bullying is an attempt to control or harm other people, and it happens repeatedly. A single episode is rude and obnoxious, but repeated behavior is bullying. And it may include threats, spreading rumors, attacking someone physically or verbally, or even excluding someone from a group with purpose. And I've included the website where some of those sort of the stopbullying.government is what is bullying, and gives you a whole list of it. So if you want to look up more specifically bullying.
And one of the things I would say, as parents, we have children with special health care needs or special needs, and kind of talked about perceived, is we have to really investigate, as parents investigate, what is bullying and what is our child perceiving. I work with a lot of kids who have like sensory integration issues, and often just something as someone bumping into them in the hall, as kids are passing from class to class, they will perceive it as bullying. They will perceive it as they did it on purpose, when it's just typical middle school or high school people moving around the building. And so I would really encourage parents, if you have a child who is saying, I'm being bullied, certainly investigate that, look into it. But if your child needs some help in some other areas as far as their sensory needs go, then look into that also.
So I agree. I think always believe your child and investigate it, but help them understand differences as well as if it's real. So some of the ways you can help your child, and this is both to avoid and to stop bullying, but also just in social situations. Help your child to solve their own problems without aggression. So again, you can't solve everything. So helping a child think up a plan, work out how they're going to change things. Really listen when you ask about your child's day. When they come in the door and you say, how was your day? And they say, fine. Well, pursue that. Ask them what they did until they decide you're actually interested. One of the most distressing things I've heard lately from some children, they weren't teens, they were middle school kids, but when their moms picked them up at school, their mom was so busy on her cell phone that she couldn't even say hello. When your child gets in the car, talk to them. They're there. The person on the phone is somewhere else. You can take voicemail, you can call them back, but you've only got one chance with your child at this age, on this day, to hear how it went and to really listen. So think about that when you pick up your kids from school. Be present, be with them, and listen to what they have to say, because they will quickly stop telling you, and then you won't know really what happened at all. Take all reports of bullying seriously, the child with sensory integration. Even if they aren't, by our definition, being bullied, they feel like it. So help them see that they aren't being bullied and how to interpret things differently. But take their concern and upset seriously. And if you as a parent see bullying, stop it. Don't let it go on. And then help your child to help other kids. And then most importantly probably is don't bully your child or bully other children or other people. Don't bully adults. And then support bully prevention programs. They're very helpful in the schools. They help kids get along.
And I was just going to kind of expand a little bit on when you said don't bully your child or others. I think one of the key things for us as parents is that we are good role models. And I mean, even things, if you're at Walmart, saying things about how slow the lines are, or how people act, or they only whatever kind of people work at Walmart, blah blah blah, sends a message to your child that it's okay to say those things. And so it's really important as parents that we are aware of what we're saying, who's listening, because kids hear everything we say. And often I will see kids in schools when I'm doing observations really just kind of role modeling or repeating what they've heard. So again, be very cognizant of who you're talking to, how you're talking, and letting your kids see how you handle conflict resolution. If there is something going on, some really, how do you in a good way handle conflict will be a great thing for your kids to learn.
Probably another part of bullying that most of us is new for a lot of us, and we're all worried about at this point, is cyberbullying. And cyberbullying takes place using any electronic technology, and that technology could be on a cell phone, a computer, on tablets, okay? And the type of places that cyberbullying communication tools include social media sites like Facebook, text messaging, in chat rooms, and on websites in general. So keeping these types of things in mind, I think remember, it's really different than face-to-face bullying. It can happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Kids have cell phones next to their bed, plugged into their ear, computers in their rooms. There's no restriction on when text messages can be sent. And they can teach kids, they can reach kids even when they're alone. It isn't a face-to-face thing anymore, anytime, day or night. Message and images can be posted anonymously, and they're distributed quickly to a very wide audience. So it can be difficult to trace the source of cyberbullying. And even if you delete inappropriate or harassing messages, they're still out there, and you can still find them. Things are never permanently deleted.
And we really encourage parents to take control, understand some of the websites that your kids are on, go look at the history. I know with some of the cell phones now, there is a way that you can call your cell phone provider and have text messages sent to you. I have a granddaughter who is a teenager, and her mother can access her text messages. She calls the provider, and they will either send those text messages to mom, or they will print them out and send them to her. So if, there's a lot of ways to control it, and can't totally stop it, but I think parents, again, have to get really plugged in. And we have to get better. One of the things that we do is we teach parents some of the cyber language. There's a lot of acronyms out there now in the cyber world, and your kids know what those are. And so I would encourage you to learn what what the acronyms are, because it's a whole separate language that our kids are really, really tapped into.
So here's some other tips for parents, and keeping in mind the goal here is to work with your child, help your child understand the ways to avoid cyberbullying. But to do that is establishing rules about appropriate use of computers, cell phones, and other technology. Be clear about what sites your child is allowed to visit, what they can do when they're online, and then show them how to be safe online. If they don't realize that putting up certain pictures of themselves or their friends are going to not restricted to who they send them to. They can go out to a wide audience very quickly. And you probably should learn know your child's passwords. So help them be smart about what they post and say. Kids at this age are immortal. They think nothing can hurt them. They post things that 5 years down the line they may regret. So help them to understand how these things continue on forever. And that they shouldn't share anything that could hurt or embarrass themselves or others. And this goes back to the old thing our parents always told us: if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. And I think keeping that in mind on the internet is just as important as face-to-face. And teach your child to think about who they want to see their information and pictures. Is it okay for a complete stranger to see it? Do they think only their real friends will see it? What about people who aren't their friends that see it? What will they use it for? And help them think about the future. Teenagers are beginning to be future-oriented, so you can strengthen that belief. Younger kids are not so future-oriented, so you're going to have to really monitor those things. Help your child and tell them to keep their passwords safe. Don't share them with your friends. Remember, in the middle school years, you're a friend or you're not a friend. Well, if you were a friend yesterday and not a friend today and they still have your password, there could be problems. So keeping passwords secure is really important. So here's some useful websites. Again, they'll be on these slides. I found these really useful. So they're for teen bullying, what parents need to know from the Mayo Clinic. Helping your child handle the bully from a government website. The Mayo Clinic bullying website again. And so here's some more websites that you can use that are pretty good ones, that are helpful in finding advice for parents, peer group interventions, research centers on bullying, Common Sense, and finally the National Crime Prevention Council has good resources on bullying and cyberbullying. Okay. And I think we're done.
We'd really like to thank everyone for your attention to this really important topic today, and thank Dr. Bowen. And if you have any more questions or comments or want more information, you can go to the Family to Family website. And again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Becky.